Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, joined now by United States Senator Tom Cotton, who will also be joining me on Friday on Inauguration Day in Washington, D.C. Senator Cotton, a good Tuesday morning to you on a very historic week.
Good morning, Hugh.
Good morning to you. Now, yesterday, Politico put out a piece, McCain fires opening shot in Pentagon budget wars with build-up plan, citing your colleague, John McCain, as having a 21-page outline of where defense spending has to go. Have you reviewed it? Do you agree with it? Is it enough?
I have reviewed Senator McCain's white paper, and I think it makes a very strong case for lifting the very onerous budget caps that have been on the Pentagon for 6 years now, rebuilding our Navy up to 350 ships, getting our Army and our Marine Corps back to where they were at the end of the last decade, and fully investing in the next generation of fighter and bombers for our Air Force. Obviously, we're going to have to find a way to pay for that. A lot of that can be done through healthy economic growth and making sure that we're running a tight ship at the Pentagon. But in the end, we have to invest in our military, what our strategy and our threats dictate.
Now, Senator Cotton, you were part of the confirmation proceedings for General Mattis, and I expect he will be confirmed. And I was so happy to hear some talk of strategy, and not strategy for next year, but not for next decade, but a generational sort of thing. We've got to look at where our near-peer competitors are. Did you get a sense that General Mattis is ready and already engaged in that rethink that has just simply been absent in the last 8 years?
Without question, Hugh. Bill Cohen, the former Maine senator and Secretary of Defense, introduced General Mattis, whom he knew as a younger officer in the Pentagon, and noted that while his nickname has been Mad Dog, based on some of his exploits and heroics on the battlefield, that a better name might be Braveheart, because he is a true thinking man's warrior, and he's been working through these exact kind of strategic questions for most of his adult life, and how we're going to confront a rising China, which continues to grow in wealth and in power in East Asia and threaten our presence there, or a Russia that, though declining in some ways demographically, geographically, economically, is also still on top the only nuclear arsenal that can challenge the United States, rogue powers like Iran and North Korea, and then, of course, transnational terrorism, whether it's Al-Qaeda or ISIS or any of their variants. General Mattis has been thinking about these strategic questions for decades. I'm confident that he'll do a very good job as Secretary of Defense in his role as member of the National Security Council, helping the President-elect flesh out a new strategy.
You also had hearings for your colleague and friend Mike Pompeo, and I believe everyone was impressed with what you and I both already knew from acquaintance with Mike Pompeo, but he's got a grasp of strategery, which is what we need.
Yes, Mike is going to be an outstanding director of the Central Intelligence Agency. He's been a success in everything he's ever done. As a cadet at West Point, he was first in his class at West Point, as an Army officer, as a lawyer, a businessman, and now a congressman. He and I have spent, countless days traveling the world or working out at the agency or overseeing the intelligence community's operations. I think he's going to bring very outstanding leadership to the agency. He's going to call the balls and strikes like they see it, whether or not that's what policymakers want to hear. But he also has a deep strategic mind as well. And in his role as a member of the National Security Council, I also think he's going to be critical in fleshing out the policies of this country going forward.
Now, today's a very big day. Theresa May, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, has concluded a speech. I've played a lot of excerpts from it. The key line was June 23rd, the day they voted for Brexit, was the moment we decide to build a truly global Britain. It's a very optimistic speech. It's about that Britain is bigger than Europe. It's about the world. Do you think that's what Trump has in mind with these? The president-elect has been giving interviews to Bild and to the Wall Street Journal and the Times of London, which has shaken Angela Merkel and the Davos set deeply. But I think he's basically saying we're done with bureaucrats and with elites.
Well, Hugh, Great Britain and then, by extension, the United States have always been bigger than Europe for 300 to 400 years, while the European powers on the continent were struggling between themselves for mastery of the continent. Great Britain first, and then the United States were simply looking to maintain a balance of power on the continent, and then looking outside the continent to the New World and to East Asia. So I think Prime Minister May is taking the British people seriously, and they voted to leave the constraints of the European Union and all of its vast technocratic, bureaucratic regulations and presumptuous attempts to govern the British people without their consent, and looking beyond Europe. Of course, Great Britain is always going to be an important part of Europe, but it's much more than that. It always has been. It always will be.
Last question. In the McCain plan, this was new to me. He's recommending a high-low mix in aircraft carriers, and he mentioned conventional carriers. Are we thinking about going back to conventionally powered aircraft carriers?
Well, I think it's a question that we should at least consider, Hugh. You know, the new class of aircraft carrier has had some trouble getting out of docks and getting out to sea. There's a robust debate going on in defense circles about whether we should be focused simply on the most cutting-edge advanced ships and aircraft of the future, or whether we should be working on more kind of plug-and-play modular prototypes where we can simply get more ships at sea, more aircraft in the air. I think that's a worthwhile debate to have.
Senator Tom Cotton, I'll see you on Friday. Thank you, Senator. Don't go anywhere, America.